This is The Toss-Up, where we take a look at some of the topics facing the world of sports, and then we dive deeper. Whether it's your best friend's fantasy team or the future of college athletics, we're just trying to expand the conversation. We just want to take a look at the topics that keep you tuned in to the beautiful world of sports. Diana Taurasi, Breanna Stewart, Simone Augustus, Candace Parker. Those names ring a bell? They should. Those are all names that belong to members of the 2,000-point club in women's college basketball. Before this season, Indiana had no members. Denise Jackson and Karna Abram came close in the 80s, but no one had reached the mountaintop wearing cream and crimson. That is, of course, until Tyra Buss did it on January 20th in a win over Michigan State. Then, a week later, she broke the school record for career steals. 2 milestones in 3 games, all wins for the Hoosiers, bringing their record in Big Ten play from 1-6 to 4-6. Following 2 straight postseason appearances, all seemed to be lost this season. But behind leaders like Buss and Amanda Cahill, they might not be done yet. Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Dugan, and joining me on the panel this week is IUS-TV women's basketball beat duo that go together like peanut butter and jelly. Dan Black and Austin Render, and IDS women's basketball beat reporter Murphy Wheeler. Guys, are we ready to talk some women's hoops?
Absolutely.
Of course. We love talking IUWBB.
All right, so some high expectations going into this season. Kind of came back down to earth, the Hoosiers did, to the start of conference play. It was a slow start to conference play. What happened?
Do you want to go? I'll go first. I think the first thing, it's a couple things. I think the first thing was sort of the fact that this team had yet to really gel. I mean, they had that experience over in Italy, which was great for them, and then they had that non-conference schedule as well, which was good for the confidence of the young players, but then it seemed like they got hit like deer in the headlights with that conference schedule, that huge loss to Michigan State. So I think that was part of it, just not being able to formally, get a whole cohesion yet. And I think the other thing had to do with the scheduling of the team. I mean, they just got hit with something hard. Before this 3-game win streak that they're on, the first 7 games, 4 of the 7 were against Ohio State twice, Maryland, and Michigan. And then Maryland, Michigan, and the 1 game at Ohio State, they were all away games. And those were the 3 top teams coming into the season that were supposed to finish 1, 2, and 3 in the Big Ten. So, I mean, you look at that. That's just not easy for a young team with a whole lot of new pieces.
You mentioned the schedule. That's what I was going to talk about. And almost the teams for sure, but almost the scheduling in terms of when they were playing. Indiana had some short rests, some quick turnarounds, weren't at home a lot this year. And so this little 4-game stretch they're in right now at home is huge, and they're loving every moment of it, and that's why they're kind of starting to win, because they can finally be at home and be back in a normal routine. So I think the young players were just on the road so much and traveling and quick turnarounds that it's nice that they've been able to settle down a little bit and be back here in Bloomington.
Yeah, you got to remember the non-conference schedule wasn't easy by any means either. They played Louisville, who's one of the best teams in the country. St. Mary's is a good team. Missouri was a good team. So they played a lot of good teams leading up to it. And, when you have 5 players on your team that are playing over 35 minutes a game, because this team doesn't have a lot of depth, and 2 of those players are freshmen, it's going to take some time to get used to the swing of things. The pace of the college game is much faster from the high school game. So those starters like Jalen Penn, Ben Duyaney, they had to take some time to get ready. And it trickled over into the Big Ten season a little bit. But I think slowly we're starting to see them kind of pull it together. And they're just getting more used to it now.
Depth is something that is good to mention as well, because this team only has a few people come off the bench. We've seen Marchese really step up into a much bigger role here lately. Wickwire's been a little bit in and out of the lineup. So for Indiana, you mentioned it's hard to win games when you have to rely on Tyra Buss and really all the starters playing the majority of the game. And so you're kind of seeing them able to get some rest, able to be at home, and be able to be a little bit more fresh on the court.
And you bring up Bree Wickwire, who's a person I think maybe needs to see a few more minutes now, because she's very athletic. She's a very good rebounder. She's a sophomore, so she's older than most of this roster anyway. She has a little bit more experience. And, you know, when she gets a rebound, she's able to take it up the court, maybe find somebody in transition on the fast break. She's a pretty good player. She really is. She's kind of developing an outside shot as well since last year. So I think that's maybe somebody that could use a few more minutes. Kiana Warden is another player that's seen some minutes here and there this year. She's a freshman. I think she's still a little bit behind the other freshmen that are starters now. But she's athletic. She gets to the rim really nice. So I don't know. We'll see if they can get some of those players in that rotation now.
And I think, you know, not having the transfers of Ali Patberg and Brenna Weiss, that's huge for them because those are two veterans. Although they weren't used to the Indiana system, they were used to playing college basketball at Pitt and Notre Dame respectively. So not having them to be on the court to give some of the younger players like a Jalen Penn or like a Bendu Yaney a little more rest and a little more ability to just sort of see the game instead of having to be thrown in there right away, I think that's had a really big effect.
And these younger players have stepped up lately and started a 3-game win streak for the Hoosiers. What specifically has spurred that 3-game win streak?
I think it's been the defense. I mean, I looked at some of the stats earlier. Most of their losses this season, both non-conference and in conference, they've given up 70 points or more. You look at the last 3 games, the most they've given up is 65. So it seems like if they can keep the opponent, you know, around 65 points, they can win these games because they can do it offensively. It's just a matter of the consistency on defense.
I think it's consistency. You mentioned it. Yeah. We've heard Coach Morin kind of talk about that, searching for consistency. You get it from Amanda Cahill and from Tyra Buss usually, but they haven't seen it as much from Jalen Penn, from Bendu Yaney, even from Kim Royster. They're still looking for more consistency from her. So you're starting to see Jalen Penn day in and day out bring everything that she's got to this team. And Bendu Yaney, just to kind of one of those players who does the dirty work for Indiana. And so you're starting to see them be much more consistent on a game-in, game-out basis, and that's huge for this team.
Yeah, Morin has said multiple times this year she's been waiting for that game where the entire starting 5 has a good game at the same time, and that just happened in their last win against Rutgers. They all played really well. Like you said, their defense has been much better. Morin has said she wants to keep the opponent's shooting percentage under 45%. They're doing better in that. They're wanting to not get out-rebounded as much, even though they're a small team. So they're getting better at a lot of things Morin has said they need to work on all year. But, you know, they just need more consistency, I think, especially as this season goes along.
The small team is something, too, to think about, because Amanda Cahill really is kind of the 5, kind of with Kim Royster. Yeah. But she can also stretch out, and she's next to Tyra, the best three-point shooter on this team. When she shoots a 3, I just kind of expect it to go in at this point. So I think that's been huge for her to be able to go to the basket and get points, but she can also stretch a bigger girl out and bring her to the perimeter and then give people lanes to cut inside and make layups.
Defensively, I saw this in the Rutgers game a little bit. They got beat baseline a lot of times defensively. And when you're a shorter team, you don't have that post presence defensively, you want to take that baseline away so you don't have to, you know, worry about players getting around the rim because they don't have a lot of people to alter shots down there like a lot of other teams they play against do. And that's something they need to work on a little bit. And I think Morin even said after the Rutgers game that that's something they got to get better at. So I think that's something they're going to have to do also.
Well, I think that's why we started to see Lindsay Marchese a whole lot more, especially we saw in that Rutgers game because they do lack a lot of height. And she's, I think, around 6'4". So that's a huge boost for them, especially defensively down low. We saw her be a prominent factor off the bench. So I think we're going to see her a ton more as the season progresses.
Now, we've name-dropped a couple of them so far, but how specifically have these young players developed from October up to this point in early February?
I think it's confidence. I think Jalen Penn has so much more confidence to shoot the basketball. I look back all the way back when Indiana played in their exhibition game, and Jalen Penn took a few threes but was very hesitant in that game. And afterwards, Coach Morin said, we just want Jalen to know that she can shoot, and we want her to shoot. And now you see her, she's got a quick trigger now, and I think that's good for this team. She knocks down some threes, she can cut to the basket. I just think confidence is there for the freshmen.
And not only confidence when they're shooting the ball, but when they're handling the ball. You saw a lot of times in the non-conference schedule, turnovers were a huge problem for this team, and it got really ugly during certain stretches. I think it was the Auburn game in the first quarter of that game. It was just they couldn't even get the ball up the court. And I think with Penn and Bendu Yaney in the backcourt, with them getting more confidence handling the ball, that has been a big part of their success here lately as well.
Yeah, I think they've really just seemed more comfortable each and every game. I feel like early on they didn't let the game come to them because they're very talented players, specifically Jalen Penn and Bendu Yanni. They're extremely talented, highly recruited out of high school. I just think they sort of let the spotlight of college basketball get to them early, and now as the Big Ten season has progressed, I think we've seen them become both confident and more comfortable on the floor.
And you have to remember, Penn and Yanni have been two of this team's best defenders all year. They're very athletic. They're very good on the ball, even though Morin talked about how Penn and Yanni, they get beat off the dribble every once in a while. But I think that's just them being a little overconfident sometimes with their athletic ability. But they are very good defensively, especially on the ball. Now IU just needs some of these other freshmen to come along so they have depth. Warthen, Marchese. Warthen needs to get more, gets better defensively and handling the ball. She's still a little bit behind those other two. Marchese needs to get a little more athletic and, more of an offensive threat. So they still have a ways to go.
I mean, I'd like to see Alexis Johnson. We spoke to her after, I think, Hoosier Hysteria, and we haven't seen her at all really this season. So I think, Coach Morin talks about depth. Well, she's not necessarily using all her bench all that much. So I would like to see Alexis Johnson make a couple runs every game just to see if we can build her confidence, because you never know. You may catch lightning in a bottle.
And it feels like Jalen Penn is getting ready to lead this team next year. It's almost like she's learning from Amanda Cahill and Tyra Buss, and then they're going to hand her the reins and let her run this team next year. And I think she's ready for it with the progression that she's made this year.
Yeah, next year it's going to help a lot that Penn's going to have Yanni, who's going to have another year of experience, and Pat Bergen-Wise are going to be here. Those will be huge additions to this team, plus a pretty good recruiting class coming in
Chanel
next year.
Wilson, and Grace Berger, huge.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Penn can maybe take over as the main offensive threat for that team.
All right, we're going to cut to break here for a second, but coming up after the break, our panel will discuss the future of the Indiana women's basketball program. So stick with us. Welcome back to the Toss-Up. We're talking Indiana women's hoops and their up and down season thus far. Before we look ahead, let's take a look at the team inside the numbers with Austin Matricardi. Austin?
Thanks, Michael. It's been a season of milestones for the Indiana women's basketball program, and it's mostly thanks to their two seniors, two of the better players in the Big Ten, two of the greatest players in program history, Amanda Cahill and Tyra Buss. The senior duos had a terrific season, averaging around half of IU's offensive production. They've also broken records and milestones galore. When the Hoosiers traveled to East Lansing, Buss became the first woman in IU basketball history to break the 2,000-point mark, and just the sixth player between the men's and women's programs to do so. Just a week later, Buss became Indiana's all-time leader in steals when she notched number 260 in a big win over Rutgers in Assembly Hall. Sandwiched in between those two achievements was one that belongs to Amanda Cahill. In the Hoosiers' win over Wisconsin, the forward pulled down her 1,000th career rebound, becoming the third woman in IU history to break that mark. As the season progresses and these stars near the end of their collegiate careers, they still have things that they can achieve. Cahill will try to chase down the career rebounding record, though she's currently a couple hundred behind the all-time leader. And Buss will almost certainly break the program's career assist record, as she sits just 24 behind the all-time leader with 6 games to go in the regular season. Back to you, Michael.
Thanks, Austin. All right, gentlemen, it's time for the lightning round. There's one rule. Your answers have to be 10 seconds or less. Are we ready?
Absolutely.
I guess so.
All right. Question 1. What has Tyra Buss done for this program? Not just this season, not just beyond the numbers, but just as a whole in her 4 years here in Bloomington.
Program changer, I think, is the two words that come to mind. You think about it, before she came, this wasn't a nationally recognized team. Now in the past 4 years, they're on the map, really.
I think recruiting. She's helping bring in more people that want to be like her and want to be a star here in the Big Ten. And so I think she's really helped Coach Morin and the coaching staff with recruiting.
Quite simply, she's probably the best player in IU women's basketball history. And that she wanted to change the landscape of this team when she got here 4 years ago, and she's done that.
The other senior leader, what has Amanda Cahill done for this program as a whole?
I think much like Tyra Buss, she also, but more from the forward position, has changed the way of Indiana women's basketball, put them on the map, made them prominent.
I think she's brought that stretch forward to Indiana, a position that every college team really needs, and she's brought that. She can shoot the three ball, she can play inside, just versatile, and that's really what she's brought to Indiana.
Great rebounder, great scorer, great shooter, but even more important, she may be their best decision makers. They can put her in the middle of the floor in a press or a zone and be perfect for them.
Now, Austin just mentioned a couple of them over at the screen. What's the most impressive milestone that's been reached this season by the team or a player?
I think it has to be the 2,000 points. That's hard to scan over. Just the fact that comprehending that she scored 2,000 points in her career, and there's not many people that have done it in collegiate basketball.
What's more impressive to me is she's broken the record in points and steals. So she's broken records offensively and defensively. So she's been a great two-way player for him.
Yeah, I 100% agree with both of them. To be able to score 2,000 points in his career is something that just most people can't say they did, especially at IU.
Yeah. And who, if anyone, is going to be able to fill Tyra and Amanda's shoes next season?
I mentioned Jalen Penn, but the more I think about it, the more I think this is a team effort. I think the transfers and the freshmen who will now be sophomores and that recruiting class, everybody's going to have to mesh together.
I think you have to look at Allie Patberg and Brenna Wise. And I think Wise is somebody you really need to watch out for. Last year, she was Pittsburgh's leading rebounder and scorer. So I think she's going to be huge next year.
I got to go with Jalen Penn. The way she's progressed from the beginning of the season to now, and to have sort of that older sister and Tyra Buss to lead her, that's been huge for her, and she's really going to take the reins next season.
I'm being told this is not the lightning round anymore, so I want to talk about Allie Patberg a little bit because I got to watch her in high school when she tore apart my high school team, and she's just someone who can go get a basket whenever you need it. At least in high school she was, and I mean she went to Notre Dame for a reason. So I'm really excited. We saw her and Josh Newkirk win the three-point contest at Hoosier Hysteria, so I'm excited to see what she brings to Indiana next year.
Yeah, and more importantly with Patberg, she's going to be a really good shooter. I think we already know that. But as a ball handler, she's going to need to really step up because I'm not sure if Penn and Yaney are point guards per se. I think they're more of off guards, and I think Patberg's going to have to take over for Tyra Buss as this team's ball handler.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what this freshman group, how they'll be able to handle sort of that leadership role next year with Chanel Wilson and Grace Berger. Will they be able to have that same leadership ability that Tyra and Amanda sort of instilled with them? Can they do that for this new class?
That's an interesting question or thought about Tyra Buss's ball handling. I think that's underrated. Yeah. I mean, she has to take the ball up every time at the floor for Indiana, and I know Coach Morin has said in press conferences that she's told Bendu and Jalen, don't be afraid to take up the basketball, but really, it is all Tyra Buss in that category, so who will take over for her is a great question.
Yeah, she's been really reliable. Now, next year, don't forget about Kim Royster. She's one of the most improved players in the Big Ten this season. Maybe she can keep progressing as a post presence down low. She gets some offensive fouls every once in a while where she's just a little too aggressive down low, maybe throws an inadvertent elbow.
Those are fouls you can live with.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
I'm happy with
at least
stuff.
she's aggressive, so I think that's something to look forward to as well.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how Lindsay Marchese, the transformation that she'll have next year, because I think if she can become a little more athletic, she'll be extremely dominant and extremely important for this team with Amanda Cahill being gone, because now they'll have another even bigger body down low to be a defensive stopper, but also offensively, be able to be close to the basket and give us some easy points down low.
Now, with all that being said, are you buying or selling the future of this program?
The program, yes.
The program, yeah.
Maybe
100%.
not this season. They still need to get to 500 to make the women's NIT. Dan wants to say that they can go for a run for March. I'm not totally in on that yet.
We'll save that for last.
But yes, I am buying in on this program as a whole. There's a lot of talent being funneled into Bloomington, and I personally believe that Tyra Buss and Amanda Cahill have done a lot for that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You're seeing slowly, like you said, recruiting earlier from Buss and Cahill's success. You're seeing that slowly start to flourish. And I think I think they might improve next year just because all 100%. These young players are going to be, 1 year older. And these transfers, I'm telling you, they're going to make a huge difference next year.
The thing about next year will be they won't have a whole lot of players. I think Royster, the only one that tasted the postseason 2 years ago, so they won't have that edge of what it felt like to be in the tournament a couple years ago. So they'll have to kind of create that own feeling.
And Patberg, I think, may have at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's a very good program. But, yeah, I like you say, you're going to need that experience a little bit. So they're still a little young next year, but, 2-3 years down the road, this could be a pretty good team.
I think by the time Jalen Penn and this whole freshman class are juniors or so, they could legit be national title contenders. I truly believe that. Depending on how recruiting goes, and the next
is still a basketball
hey,
program.
I didn't say that they would beat them. I'm saying that they could make a run in the tournament. All right, let me change my answer. They could make a deep run in the tournament.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a hard sell. Are you buying this team
This season or
in the future, past
Yeah,
this season?
100%.
And can I hear you make your case for the NCAA tournament this season? Austin brought it up.
I
We
hear
can't
this
avoid it.
every women's game.
we can't
we talk
avoid
about
it.
this every women's game. Sometimes even not during women's game, I'll just text him. But I
true.
just believe if they can win out through this homestand and somehow catch lightning in a bottle, it's not like we've never seen it before in sports where a team just gets hot and they continue to stay hot, and the next thing you know, they're in a deep run in the playoffs. We've seen it before. Is it likely? Probably no. The percentage is pretty low, but I'm a very optimistic person.
Look, I
That's all I
love
can
this
say.
team, and I want them to do well, but you're telling me that a team that has been inconsistent all season and has a bunch of freshmen playing heavy minutes is going to win out?
Trust the process.
I don't know about it, but I think, and there's nothing wrong with it, that women's NIT is a good goal for this team because they can get that postseason experience, which some of these freshmen need, and they can host games in Assembly Hall and still get the crowd out there for that. So they had a great run in it last year. I think they can do it again this year and give Cahill and Buss a good little final tour here in Bloomington.
I mean, you got to remember, though, to win out, they got to beat some pretty good
Yep.
teams.
They gotta
in the
beat
Big Ten.
Nebraska.
Nebraska's a very good team. They got to go to Minnesota, which is a tough place to play for
Three of
anybody.
the last four are all away.
Right,
too.
so it's going to be tough. But, I mean, I'm not saying they can't do it, but I'm not going to bet on it.
Any postseason appearance would be nice for this team. Prior to that 2016 NCAA tournament appearance, their last big dance was 2002.
Yep.
So it's been almost 2 decades since they did that. Going into that, 3 straight would be no slouch.
Certain teams, the NIT can benefit more than others. I think this is a team that it can really benefit
Absolutely.
because Jalen Penn, Bendu Yaney, Marchese, these girls haven't played in a collegiate tournament like that. So I think that's going to be huge for them just to get any sort of tournament exposure.
Totally. All right. Well, as we near the end of this discussion, it's time for last word. What is your guys' last word on IUWBB?
They're going to win out, I'm telling you.
You heard it here first.
All right, Dan thinks they're going to win out. I love this team, and my final word is go watch this team. You have 3 more opportunities this weekend on Sunday, next Thursday, and then senior night in a couple weeks. Watch this Tyra Buss and Amanda Cahill show that they're putting on because these 2 girls deserve your attention, and you're missing out if you never go and watch
It's fun
them.
to watch.
Yep.
Yeah, and, I agree with that just because, we talk a lot about Tyra Buss. She's getting a lot of publicity for these scoring records, everything, all these records that she's breaking. Don't forget about Amanda Cahill. She's one of the most underrated players in the Big Ten, in my opinion, just because of how smart of a player she is. It's just kind of amazing to watch both of those players play.
Almost 2 generational talents are playing in Assembly Hall right now in their senior seasons. And I guess my final word kind of piggybacks off of Austin's. And these are 2 girls that you should go out and absolutely see play if you haven't yet, or even if you have. They're absolutely worth it. And this is a program on the rise regardless of what happens at the end of the season. Postseason play or not. 2 postseason appearances in their final 3 seasons for Tyra Buss and Amanda Cahill is almost uncharted territory in recent history for this program. So this is a program to keep your eye on and certainly be proud of. Well, that'll do it for the show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions you may have. Toss it up. Find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.